The Last Ornament. He thought the last ornament was just glass, until it began to glow with a lost memory. On the edge of a small town where porches wore garlands and every window held a candle, the Parker house sat with a gentle sort of pride. Its porch creaked in the winter like an old friend clearing his throat, and the front steps remembered 1,000 boots, big and small, stomping off snow. Inside, the living room smelled like cinnamon and pine, with a fireplace that didn't shout as much as it hummed. The tree, tall, almost reaching the ceiling, stood in the corner near the window. Mrs. Parker said she always placed it there so passing neighbors could borrow a little cheer, the way a friendly person might loan sugar. Beneath the tree, a cardboard box waited. It had been taped and untaped so many times the corners looked soft, like elbows in a well-loved sweater. Inside, nestled among old tissue, slept a handful of ornaments from years gone by, some handmade and lopsided, some glassy and proud, some dented and shy. They were the Parkers' history in tiny, shining pieces. At the very bottom of that box lay the last ornament. It wasn't much to look at first, a small glass ball, pale blue with a thin ring of silver stars painted by a careful hand long ago. A narrow crack ran along one side, the kind of flaw that didn't ruin a thing so much as it proved it had lived. The ornament had a name once, whispered by a little girl many Christmases ago, but time has a way of tucking names into quiet places. When Mrs. Parker called the kids in, Max with his cheeks bright from the cold, and Lucy with her hair clipped back in a red bow, they came with the excited seriousness children have for important jobs. Mr. Parker stood ready with the step stool, and the family decorating began. They hung the wooden sled and the felt snowman that always tilted, no matter how they coaxed it. They found the star for the top and the paper garland Lucy made in kindergarten, which somehow had survived 3 moves, and a spilled cup of cocoa. Laughter stitched the evening together in neat, warm lines. But when the box was almost empty, Lucy reached into the tissue paper and felt something cool and round. She pulled out the pale blue ornament and held it up to the light. It caught the glow of the fire and threw pinpricks of silver onto the ceiling, like a modest constellation trying its best. "Mom," Lucy asked, "whose is this?" Mrs. Parker paused, one hand on a branch, her eyes given the faraway look of someone walking through a memory. "That," she said softly, "belonged to your Grandma June. The heart's winter, a quiet wish." Grandma June had passed away in the spring when the lilacs were just beginning to believe in themselves again. She loved Christmas in the way some people love a song that knows their name. Every year, she hung that pale blue ornament last, after the cookies were baked and the cocoa cups were rinsed and the house smelled like joy and cinnamon. She'd step back, nod once, and say, "There, now it's a Christmas tree." Lucy turned the ornament in her small hands, careful not to press where the thin crack showed. She'd been brave all year, the way kids sometimes are when grown-ups are learning how to be brave too. But now, with the tree glowing and the winter wind painting the windows, she felt a tightness in her chest she hadn't named. "I miss her," Lucy whispered. "We all do," Mr. Parker replied, steady and kind. "And maybe that's why we found this one last." Max, who preferred action to quiet, cleared a spot on a front branch. "We'll put it here," he declared, "right where we can see it." Lucy nodded, but her eyes were wet. "Do you think she knows we're hanging it?" Mrs. Parker, kneeling beside her, brushed a thumb across Lucy's cheek. "I think love knows its way home," she said. The room grew still enough to hear the clock in the hallway tick toward midnight, each second a soft footstep. The fire crackled as if it wanted to say something but hadn't learned how. Lucy held the ornament a little closer to her heart before lifting it toward the tree. The spark of wonder, a gentle Christmas magic. When the hook found the branch, the ornament swung forward and back, as delicate as a breath. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the pale blue glass caught the firelight just so, and tiny silver stars burst across the ceiling again, more of them this time, more than any one ornament should be able to make. Max noticed first. "Whoa," he breathed. "Did you see that?" Mr. Parker tilted his head. "Must be a trick of the light," he said, but he smiled like he didn't mind being tricked. Lucy stared, unblinking. She set her palm beneath the ornament without touching it, the way you might hover your hand near a sleeping bird. The stars on the ceiling wavered, then settled into a soft, patient glow. "Hi, Grandma," Lucy whispered, feeling a little foolish and a lot hopeful. A draft moved through the room, not cold exactly, more like the hallway air that follows someone you love when they walk into a place. The evergreen branches trembled, the ornament swayed once more, and the crack, so delicate and familiar, caught her eye. It looked less like a break and more like the line where two halves agreed to become one thing again. Mrs. Parker rose and turned down the lamps until the room was lit mostly by the tree and the fire. The house felt like a sanctuary made by time and care. Outside, the wind sighed, and the first real snow of the night began. "Let's sit," she said, and they did, on the rug, on the couch, near one another in the easy tangle of family. "Tell us about Grandma's Christmas," Max asked, surprising himself with how much he wanted to hear it. Mrs. Parker folded her legs beneath her. "Your Grandma June was good at finding the last little things," she began. "The last cookie at the bottom of the tin, the last pine cone under the tree in the yard, the last seat at the crowded school concert that somehow had the best view. She said, 'Last things have a way of teaching us how to look, not just how to see.'" Lucy rested her head on her mother's shoulder. The pale blue ornament listened with them, its constellation steady. "And every year," Mrs. Parker went on, "we packed that ornament away first, so we'd remember to open it last. She said it was like saving a quiet moment for the end, a way to tell the season thank you." "Like dessert for your heart," Max said thoughtfully. "Exactly," Mrs. Parker smiled. The fire popped and the clock ticked, and the snow tapped softly against the window. The ornament seemed to glow from within now, a calm light, as if it had found its place. The gift within, what changes everything. The next morning, the Parkers woke to a town powdered in white, the kind of snow that makes footsteps sound honest and puts hats on everything. Mr. Parker shoveled the walk while Max and Lucy built a snow person with a scarf that used to belong to their grandmother. It made Lucy laugh to imagine Grandma June pretending to be cross about a cold scarf and then sneaking cocoa to the kids anyway. Back inside, the house felt warmer than the thermostat claimed. The ornament hung where they'd left it, the silver stars faint in the daylight, like freckles that only show in summer. Lucy stood in front of it for a long time. "What are you thinking?" Mr. Parker asked, passing with a laundry basket full of sweaters that smelled like the top drawer of a dresser and winter soap. "I'm thinking," Lucy said slowly, "we should do something last, like Grandma would, something that makes this year say, 'Thank you.'" So they set about it. Not big gestures, but last little things. They wrapped the last batch of cookies and brought them to Mrs. Alvarez next door, who always said she didn't bake anymore, but still loved the way sugar turned the air sweet. They picked the last candy canes from the jar and tied them to the town notice board with a note. Take one if you need a smile. They lit the last candle in the box and carried it to the small table under Grandma June's picture. The flame sat there like a good listener. In the afternoon, they took the last blanket from the basket, Grandma's patchwork one with the tiny stitches, and drove to the community center, where the town collected warm things for anyone who could use them. Lucy folded it carefully on top of the pile and pressed her hand there, not to hold on but to let go. On the way home, the sky turned the color of early evening, that soft blue that whispers, "It will be night, soon." The town strings winked on, and the Parker house waited at the end of the street like a promise kept. When they stepped inside, the room welcomed them. Tree lights, quiet music, the faint familiar hum of the heater doing its job and not asking for praise. The ornament greeted them too with a gentleness that felt almost like recognition. Lucy climbed onto the couch and tucked her feet under her. "Mom?" she asked. "Can we read the recipe card? The one Grandma wrote for the cinnamon stars?" Mrs. Parker's smile flickered with surprised tenderness. "Yes," she said. "Let's do that." They found the old card, its corners softened by the years, the handwriting tall and slightly leaning, like someone peeking over a fence to see the good in things. Together, they measured and mixed, and when the first batch came out a little crooked, they laughed the way people do when something imperfect is still exactly right. Toward evening, the doorbell rang. On the porch stood Mr. Wilkes, the retired music teacher, with the big knit hat and the coat he'd worn since before anyone could remember. He held a brown grocery bag and a careful smile. "I wasn't sure," he said, "but I thought, perhaps, your family might like this." He pulled from the bag a stack of old Christmas sheet music, the kind printed on paper that had gone soft and yellow around the edges. On top lay a folded photo of a school choir, decades old. There in the front row, with a posture that said she wanted to stand tall, was a girl with familiar eyes. "Your mother," Mr. Wilkes said to Mrs. Parker, almost shy. "She sang like a bell, clear, honest." They set the music on the piano, which hadn't been opened since spring. Mr. Parker pressed a key and found it held a tune after all. They gathered close, and for a long moment they didn't sing. They just looked at the notes and the faces in the photo and breathed the same air as memory. Lucy cleared her throat. "Could we try?" They did. It wasn't perfect. Voices went shy and then brave, and the piano wobbled, and the dog barked once from the hallway as if to offer a bass note. But when they reached the last line of the carol, something in the room steadied. The pale blue ornament glowed. The fire leaned toward them, and in the small stretch of silence after the final chord, they felt the kind of fullness that has nothing to do with cookies, the whisper of Christmas, the ending that stays. That night, when the house had tucked itself in and the snow kept writing its soft story on the lawn, Lucy tiptoed back to the tree. The room was patient with her, the way nighttime rooms are with children who have something important to say. She stood before the ornament and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "We did the last little things today," she told it. "We said thank you." The ornament, being glass and old and made for catching light more than making it, did not answer. But the silver stars it threw on the ceiling gathered into a gentle shape Lucy recognized. Not a face exactly, nothing so plain, but a feeling made visible. "Good night, Grandma," she said. "Merry Christmas." Behind her, the clock in the hall ticked to the hour, and somewhere a branch shifted in the wind against the house. The tree sighed softly, if trees can sigh, and the ornament settled as if it had found the exact center of its place. In the morning, they would wake to footprints on the porch and a fresh dusting of snow on the sill, and a neighbor's thank you note tucked beneath the doormat. They would pour cocoa and pass a plate of cinnamon stars that tasted like time well spent. They would light the candle under Grandma June's picture, not because they were sad, but because love glows when you give it air. But for now, the room simply held them. A family, a tree, a small blue ornament that had lived enough to crack and shine anyway. The last thing hung, and somehow, as Grandma June had promised, that made everything feel complete. And if you had stood outside on the sidewalk and looked in through the window that night, you might have sworn the lights on the tree were breathing. You might have thought you saw a woman's shadow where there was none. Or maybe you would have just felt warmer than you were a minute before and not minded the mystery. Either way, the Parker house kept its gentle pride, and the town slept a little easier, and the snow went on, doing what snow does, softening edges, blessing what it touches, keeping secrets. And that's how Christmas found its way into another heart.